Hi guys, you asked me about custom straight out of the camera settings that I was talking about in my S-Log3 video. So here it is. I will show you those settings on my ZV E10 as an example, but it should work with most of the Sony mirrorless cameras, even those without picture profiles like the A6000. Remember that this is based on my personal taste. What I want to achieve is a natural filmic look. I want to avoid digital smartphone ugliness. For the best outcome from ZV E10 and other Sony cameras, I would still recommend S-Log3, but I know that not everyone has time and will to deal with picture profiles, so this should be a nice alternative for you. So here is how the image with these settings look like compared to default settings. And here is a comparison to S-Log3, which was the profile I wanted to get close to when I was making tests. As a basic setting, I would go with standard because of the most accurate colors, with -3 contrast, -1 saturation and -5 sharpness. You may wonder why I pull sharpness all the way down. Well, I want people to look good on the camera in the first place, and sharpness makes faces look bad, showing all unnecessary details of the skin. Here is an exaggerated example of what is the difference between details and digital sharpening. It's much better to push sharpness down, instead of applying fake skin softening. The main key in those settings is underestimated dynamic range optimizer. It's on auto as a default. I was avoiding this setting myself because it just seems to push up the shadows, making the image too bright, without gaining more information in highlights. Here is the max setting on level 5, so if the shadows are pushed up, why don't we push down the whole exposure? That way we keep the shadow information and gain more highlights. I would go with either a -0.3 or -0.7 for a more moody look. Of course, as with all auto exposure settings, you would have to adjust exposure compensation on some scenes, like when you are backlit, for example. If you want to add more punch depending on the scene, I would go either -2 contrast with -1 saturation or -3 contrast and 0 saturation, because adding contrast also adds saturation. But of course you can do as you like. That's just my preference to make the image look natural. So here are the full settings I recommend, with 2 optional more contrasty and more saturated looks. If you also want to know my recommendation on which auto settings I would use, then it would depend if you care about natural motion blur or not. If so, I would set shutter speed priority to double the frame rate most of the time, and set it higher if you plan to use stabilization either in camera or in catalyst browse. If you don't care about motion blur, then I would set either aperture priority or just full auto. But for low light situations, I would still recommend shutter speed priority, so it would not go below 1/50th. If it comes to ISO, then I would personally set it to max 3200. More than that is unusable anyway for me personally, but if you don't have another option, then do what you need. If you plan to use Zebra on ZV E10 and this profile, then you should set it to 94+, because if you set contrast lower than 0, Zebra will not show, same as when using S-Log3. I hope this was helpful for you. If you have some questions, write down in the comments. I'm also considering making a Q&A video, so let me know if you are interested. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and see you next time.